Now, Ukraine's acting president says police and security forces are helpless to quell the unrest in parts of the country's east. Oleksandr Turchynov addressed parliament in Kiev hours after more government buildings in the east were taken over by pro-Russia groups. The rebels have been patrolling checkpoints outside the city of Slavyansk to stop an advance by Ukrainian security forces. Turchynov says the government's main goal is to stop the unrest from spreading.
Hired soldiers, infiltrators and special forces operating on Ukrainian soil have been tasked to attack these regions. That is why I would like to underline, dear colleagues, our main task is to prevent the terrorist threat from spreading to the regions of Kharkiv and Odessa, and I will personally oversee it being implemented.
Brennan joins us now live from Kiev. Paul, the president's sounding pretty desperate there. I mean, we've not really heard this sort of talk before.
No, we haven't, but I think what he's saying there is frankly what many other people have been saying for many days now. The reality is that the police force and the authorities within those eastern cities are either unwilling or perhaps simply unable to combat the forces that are ranged against them. These are well-organized, quite heavily armed groups that are taking over these municipal buildings in those cities over there in the east. And the loyalty of some of the police forces, don't forget Donetsk is the hometown of the former President Yanukovych. The loyalty of some of the police forces in those cities is questionable, to say the least. The acting president was speaking in that way because he was addressing a meeting of more than 20 regional governors, the heads of more than 20 oblasts. We're going into a 4-day public holiday starting tomorrow here in Ukraine, and it's clear that he wanted to get the message out that there should be no slacking over that holiday period. In fact, we've heard in the last hour an announcement from Kiev City Council here that there will be a kind of tactical special exercise take place in the early hours of tomorrow morning, Thursday. No details yet as to exactly what that will entail. It may simply be the movement of an armoured column through the city, but it gives an indication of just how tense the situation is here and how great the fear of provocation is.
Yeah, and a very real fear as well. I mean, we keep hearing of yet more government buildings being taken over in the east. Just how much of that area is now in control of the pro-Russia separatists?
Well, this is open to interpretation. We had a briefing just yesterday from the US ambassador to Ukraine, Jeffrey Pyatt. Now, he played it down. He rather described it, well, I'll give you the quote. He described it as ink spots of instability. He said that although these were isolated incidents that were getting a lot of media coverage, they weren't actually joined up, and it shouldn't be over-exaggerated. That said, the reality in those cities is that the authorities are simply not able to conduct their business as normal. And that is particularly worrying because we have a May 25th presidential election due to take place. I attended a briefing just earlier on this morning, and one of the gravest concerns that they had was how the election is going to take place in those eastern regions. They said the election will go ahead and it will remain legitimate even if people in the east choose not to take part. But the distinction that the Election Commission was making was there's a difference between people staying away from the polls. That's a matter of choice. But those people who are prevented from taking part in the polls, that is terrorism.
OK, Brennan live for us there from Kiev. Thanks very much, Paul.